Hello, I'm Patrick Weiss. Welcome to In Conversation. This is an opportunity for you to meet some of the excellent presenters that will be sharing their experience at the 2017 Insurance-Canada Technology Conference in February. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Craig Haney from Communitech, the world-renowned hub in Kitchener. Craig will be presenting our keynote session, Creating a Culture of Innovation in a Disruptive World, at our conference. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks to be here. Happy to be here.
Well, glad you're here too. For those who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about Communitech and what your role is there?
Absolutely. So my role at Communitech is as the Director of Corporate Innovation. So my job is to help the big companies that are here tap into this technology ecosystem that we've built here between Toronto and Waterloo, and how to get value out of all of the really cool stuff that's happening. Communitech itself has been around for about 20 years, so we'll have our 20th anniversary next year. And our job is to help technology companies start, grow, and succeed. We're a not-for-profit organization where about 50% of our revenue comes from private sector, which is really our membership and our big corporates doing work and sponsoring a bunch of programs here. And then 50% is public, and a lot of that money comes from comes into Communitech to help grow the startup ecosystem. And so that's really our job, is to help the startup technology companies do the things that they need to do to grow and to acquire early customers and fix their product. For our mid-sized companies, what we call our scale-up companies, helping them grow to global markets and to grow the talent and the structure that's required to become a $10 million, $100 million, billion-dollar company. And then for our enterprise companies is really helping them learn from the startups, and what I would say is sort of inject some startup DNA in some of our bigger companies to help them be a nimble hippo as we sort of brand our corporates that are doing innovation here.
I love that nimble hippo that you use in some of your publications, and congratulations on the 20 years. It's an excellent track record. My experience being out at Communitech is that it's home to a number of industry sectors. We focus, as you know, specifically in the financial services and insurance areas. So, how active are financial services and insurance at Communitech?
So the financial sector is actually very active. It's probably our most active sector here. We have Fair Ventures, which is a subsidiary of Fairfax, Manulife, TD, Deloitte, and a few others to come. And you know, as I mentioned earlier about what the corporates are doing, they're really trying to participate in the ecosystem by working with startups. They could be becoming a customer of the startups, an early customer, or they could be investing them in some cases, partnering or even acquiring them. And the other part that they're trying to do is to hire new talent, because you know, as the world becomes more digital, the requirement for our financial services and our insurance companies to be more digital is ever growing, and to hire that talent becomes more difficult and more difficult. So by putting a lab in here, it helps them sort of attract a different type of person because of the cool stuff they're doing, and as well as the space that they're working in. And finally, trying to embrace a culture of innovation outside of the mothership or the four walls of the corporation by building these labs and by creating entire new teams focused really on innovation.
Well, that's great. There's some new words that are coming out of this, and two of them that I'm hearing very frequently are fintech and insurtech. Can you give a relatively simple description of what these monikers are, and maybe an example of how these work within the Communitech ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and there's 100 other techs. There's reg tech, there's ocean tech, there's air tech, there's lots of technologies, and really what they are is they're simply technologies that are trying to tackle the challenges and problems of a specific industry. So financial services and insurance would have some specific problems or opportunities for startups to tackle, and so that's where those come in. A good example of that is Wealthsimple, and what they do is if you're not familiar with them, they're a startup out of Toronto that are really focused on young professionals and utilizing robo-advising technology, but focused more on the experience. So robo-advising isn't new, but but really targeting the audience as well as targeting the experience of investing in this sort of new way was really the focus of Wealthsimple. And you've seen they've got some significant investments from some big old financial services companies like Power Corp to help them grow their business. In the insurance space, data is probably the most disruptive technology right now. Just the sheer ability to collect data from different sources and then crunch that data and make that into information and then ultimately knowledge that insurance companies can use to help drive what the next business is. Because as data becomes more democratized and personal, all of those actuary tables that insurance companies use for deciding on rates and risk is they're becoming more and more challenging to actually build the models out, because the data is becoming so prolific and so personalized. It becomes very difficult to truly analyze the risk and opportunity is for the business. So those are a couple more, and I've got another couple examples that I'll share during my presentation in February.
We'll look forward to that. So I understand the insurers represent a source of funding for the work that's being done. But beyond that, what role do insurers play at Communitech? If you could just articulate some of that.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, insurers have the opportunity to become early customers for some of our startups when they need to be able to sort of wrap their head around working with a small company that might be a little different than them and have a bit of a different structure and things, but very important. They could also really provide some insights and opportunities into the challenges of their industry. A lot of these startups tend to be younger people and may not have a lot of examples or experience in the industry, and the insurance here can actually provide that examples and that experience to help drive some of the business models of the startups and then ultimately benefit from that. So when the large organizations are in the hub and the startups actually have access to them in real time, like every day, because they're living in the same space, they can solve these problems really quickly. They don't have to figure out how to find the right procurement or purchasing person or to find the right person within the insurance company to actually present this idea. They've got access to them every day, and ultimately in that environment, both the startups win as well as the large company.
Well, that's great. So maybe you could give us some examples of some of the successes you've seen with the insurers working with some other folks to create something that's new and novel, and maybe talk about what are some of the critical success factors associated with that.
Sure. I'll give you a really good example. It happened very recently. Fair Ventures, as I mentioned, is a subsidiary of Fairfax that operates here at the hub. Recently invested $2.5 million in Dozer, which is a startup that creates a market for heavy machinery, farm equipment, that sort of thing, in short-term leasing when they tend to be idle. It was interesting. So Fairfax was Fair Ventures was able to connect Dozer at first to an insurance product that actually helped them in their business operate within a way to be able to provide insurance for these short-term leasing event, and so that was the first value add that Fair Ventures offered to Dozer. But then as they started to work together, they recognized that the opportunity to actually invest in the company because of the parallels to a bunch of the subsidiary companies provided a great chance for them to actually help the company grow and benefit from that. So that significant investment then will help Dozer grow, but also gives Fair Ventures a piece of the pie as they continue to raise money and raise value within their organization. And so I understand that the partners, there'll be some of those partners there. I think Dozer and Fairfax will be at the event and doing a breakout session at ICTC talking specifically about this initiative.
That's correct. We do have somebody from Dozer, from Fairfax, and from Fair Ventures that are going to be talking about big commercial disruption, and they're going to provide details on that case study, which I think is going to be very interesting for the attendees.
I certainly encourage your listeners to go to that. So going back to that second question that you had, Patrick, around the critical success factors. It's really around the large companies starting to look at problems and dissecting those problems into fundamental opportunities that can either significantly improve the customer experience or decrease the process or risk involved in these things. It sounds very straightforward, but in life it's not that easy because often in sort of technology, the IT folks come in to buy solutions. They've already figured everything out, and they know what they want to buy, and they go out and do their RFP and they buy it. In this world, where the companies come in is to say, I don't know if I fully understand the problem, and I really want to focus on that problem from a customer lens, and I'm going to go through a bunch of ways to really focus on the customer problem and dissect that customer journey and find out ways to improve that product or the service and the experience that the customer has. And then make it really easy for the startups to actually work with the big companies. There's a lot of barriers that startups have when they're trying to work with large enterprise. Procurement and legal, they have their own agenda, and to protect the company and to ensure that risk is mitigated, and startups in some respects provide that or present a little bit of risk for them. But within the context of pilots and small initiatives, we should be having our large enterprises look for ways to work with startups instead of look for reasons not to work with them. So that's what we're seeing a lot of, is really creative ways for these large organizations to start to work with startups and then have them provide the value long term.
And that's interesting because insurers really rely on large core systems to manage the business and to maintain currency with regulators in a number of different areas. So many of them are now upgrading these larger systems. Perhaps you could talk about how InsurTech actually fits into that environment.
So this is where our large organizations, as I said before, need to put their customer hat on a little bit more, as well as take a bit of leap of faith. There's not, no matter how much you try, there's not always a definitive outcome to some of these innovation activities and the actual path to success might also be a bit murky. And corporates seem to think that if they spend more time on the plan and planning, that the outcome will be exactly what they expect. And to be honest, it's still not always that way. It's just a more expensive way to do it. But what we want our customers to do is to say, okay, or our big companies to do is to say, okay, we need to solve this customer problem. I don't know exactly how we're going to do it or exactly the pathway to get there, but I truly want to solve the pain, and we've got a bunch of customers who have sort of expressed this to us, and we think that this app or this product that we're going to build will actually make them happy and will make them want to engage with us on more often. The other part of that is that it might not technologically fit into existing, as you said, core applications and core systems that might be 10, 15, 20 years old and hold a lot of customer data and information. But if the customer problem is big enough and the ability and willingness to pay for that customer is strong enough, or the retention strategy there is strong enough, then you need to figure out ways to integrate that. Now, I'm not going to get technical on here, but there are lots of ways to do it. But they do take a bit of a leap of faith and a bit of a check-in on some of the modern technology opportunities that are there. But really focusing on the customer side and the pains that you're solving and the willingness and ability to pay for that pain to go away or for that opportunity to be amplified it should be the driving force, not necessarily does it integrate with our existing core technologies, because there are ways to integrate them if the problem is big enough.
Well, you've covered a lot of ground, and I know you're going to cover a lot more at the conference. You're going to be talking to insurers and brokers there. What is the one thing that you would like them to take away from your presentation there?
So I really want them to experiment. I want them to start building hypotheses, testing their assumptions of what the future might look like, and starting to say, what are the methodical and process-driven ways to actually build net new products and services that delight our customers? And that starts with, well, how might we help our customers? How might we solve this problem and delight them? Instead of sort of saying, we want to be this or we want to be that. It's like, well, how can we help our customer, number one, and then take that experimental approach to it. I want them to be open to the unknown and partnerships. Whether it's working with organizations like us at Communitech to meet startups, to helping to build a culture of innovation, or promoting those people within your organization that are willing to take those risks or share the lessons that learned from mistakes that they made. Because that's how the organization benefits, is when they make these experiments, they make some mistakes, they share that across the organization, and everyone gets better at it. And so that those big opportunities ultimately unveil themselves, because you have a constant feedback loop of what works and what doesn't. And then to that point, I also want them to know that there is a methodology, that innovation is not just about sneakers and hoodies and cool space and MacBooks and things like that. That there truly is a process and a methodology to innovation that big companies can take, and it's one of the things that we're going to go through in my presentation, is what does that methodology look like to really help our companies become those nimble hippos that we want them to be.
And I think that's going to be a really important contribution to the people who attend. Thanks very much, Craig, for your overview of this. I'm looking forward to the session. And for those of you who are listening, you can meet Craig in person at the 2017 Insurance-Canada Technology Conference. It's being held at the Allstream Centre in Toronto on February 28th. You can find information and registration details at Insurance-Canada.ca/ICTC. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much.